Here we go! Okay, let's go! Hi, everybody. Michael Stevens here, aka Flake of Wrath. And here on the One Up XP show, we are starting a new segment called the Coaches Roundtable. I'm not sure how many I can put out of these just because it takes a lot of time and manpower to get the coaches around and for us to sit around for a few hours and discuss topics. But that is essentially what I did. The great mind, Chris Bilski, the head of esports at Grand Valley State University, he told me, man, you should get coaches together and discuss some topics. So I was like, dude, you're onto something. That's a great idea. It's 2 hours long. So we split it into 4 episodes. We have 4 topics and 3 coaches and me. And we talk about those 4 topics. They get to choose the topic. They give 4 minutes of what the topic is about. And then we open the floor to everybody to discuss how we correct the situation, how the situation is wrong. Just basically talking about the topic at hand. And these are all topics that are hot button topics right now in the collegiate esport world. And so I took Adam Antor, I took Chris Bilski, and I took Carl Leone, who's all been on the One Up XP show in podcast form, and also even visited Carl Leone at Playtime, where Oakland University practice and plays down in Auburn Hills. So we sat down, we took 4 topics, we took turns choosing topics and then giving our thoughts on the topic and then discussing the topic. And it was a lot of fun. It reminds me of something like kind of Around the Horn, if you remember from ESPN, but it is a lot of fun. And we discuss some heavy hitting topics.
I'm all set.
Everyone's like, no, get us away from this subject, please. Everyone's face literally lit up like, all right, well, boys, we have one more subject left. Who would like to pick it? I'm just kidding because it's literally the last one. Divisions within collegiate esports. Now, I'm not going to lie. When I started this show, this was actually the biggest question in my dome. Why the hell isn't there certain, why isn't there the Big Ten? Why isn't there the Pac-12? Why isn't there the SEC of esports? Like, how god darn hard is it to actually have divisions in college? But we are going to tackle this one right now. What you guys want to bring up with this, I don't know. Who wants to lead it? I don't know. But we're going to be doing divisions within collegiate esports. You guys fight. Go.
I'll jump in.
Mortal Kombat.
Let me give my elevator speech for divisions.
All right, elevator speech for divisions, and Carl starts us. And well, actually, we don't even have a timer. This one's free for all. Go.
having a national agreement on, let's say, a 3-tiered division level based on talent, where you would compete within your own division only across whatever, or in your own title, I guess. It would have to be for each game because some schools are way better at one game than another. But this kind of system that we're dreaming up would be, I think, incredibly valuable to the ecosystem in general.
So like Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. Well, hold on. He's got to get in the elevator. He hasn't even pushed the button yet.
So Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. I think it'd be really valuable.
Collegiate esport or collegiate sports where you have Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, but then you factor in all the game titles, so it's like a subcategory with Division 1, Division 2, Division 3.
Yep. You basically have to rank all of the teams for League of Legends and collegiate esports, and then take the top 1/3, put them in category, middle 1/3, bottom 1/3. I think that would be really valuable to the experience of the players. Just because if you can imagine, if you're not within the top 1% of skill in each game, you essentially don't really have a chance. Like you can't even dream of a world where you win collegiate esports nationally, the full true on national bracket. So for League of Legends, that would be College League of Legends C-Law from Riot Games.
Okay.
You just don't get to dream of that unless you're within that top 1% or 0.5%. I'll put it this way: in the most competitive games, League of Legends, if you have a team that's full 0.05%, which I think is Master or Grandmaster, you still feel like you don't have a shot at winning the national championship. So I can imagine a team that has only plat players, or just for reference, like 15%, top 15% of players, right? So they're great players. They're better than 85% of the rest of the players in North America, but they just get stomped on all day long by players who are way better. And they just never get good competitive experience and true competition. So I think having full-on divisions would be good. How to implement them, that's not a question that I can answer. So don't even worry about that question coming my way. But as a sub topic here, I'll kind of talk on it. Having full-on divisions, I think would be good, but having conferences, which is what we're starting to see, kind of replaces that. And I think helps out quite a bit, because then you as a director can choose to put your team within a certain conference that's around the same competitive level so that you can have a true competitive season. So I think that helps alleviate that pain, but I think true on divisions would really help. Adam, tell me why I'm wrong.
I generally agree with the sentiment that the idea that there's a vast difference between top programs and bottom programs. The problem is the way to quantify that is impossible right now. That the idea that we would create divisions would have to be on a yearly basis if we're going by rank, because schools like Bay State come out of nowhere and they're instantly the best team in the country. And if we have divisions that go over year to year, they would not be able to compete for a national championship. At Aquinas, I would not be able to compete against the University of Michigan or Michigan State if I was locked to a conference that was based on school size, for example. Those divisions would also prevent good players from going to those schools and creating better teams. They would only go to schools like a D1 league school.
But to Carl's point, though, that's where it's going to end up if the NCAA gets involved, correct?
Yes. If I was at a D1, I'd probably have a different response to this.
Right.
Because I don't want to be, if I'm Michigan, I don't want to be playing Aquinas, because there's no good. If I beat them, that's like the expectation. If I lose to them, I'm losing to an NAI school.
But if Aquinas beats you, and then Aquinas is happy. But they do that though for football. You know what I'm saying? Like, we pay you good money to show up so we can kick your ass.
Well, that's another D1 school and they're getting paid for it. So yes. But if we were going to change it year to year, like Carl says, there's plenty of players that use alt accounts who might be lower ranked than they actually are. Or there might be schools that pay boosters to boost them into the highest division, even though they don't deserve to be there, because of the marketing opportunities. I think there's a general sentiment that yes, the top schools should be put together, but there's not a feasible way to do that, in my opinion. Hence, we should not do it.
So yet, or there's no way that it can happen?
Not until we're required to do so by another body like the NCAA or developers.
Right. Okay.
So for me, like when you're looking at, let's look at the current, I'll use the NCAA as an example, right? How is the NCAA divided into divisions, right? It's not based on the size of your school. It's actually based on the amount of resources you're allowed to offer students. Right. There are some very small, actually, Division I schools that only have 3,000 or so students in them, right? But what the great equalizer among Division I, Division II, and Division III schools is what they're able to offer students in terms of scholarships.
And
all Division III schools
D3
have
can't.
this. Exactly. That's the equalizer, right?
Yeah.
Division III schools do not offer athletic scholarships.
Correct.
Division II schools have a certain amount that they can offer. And then Division I schools have a greater amount that they can offer, right? That is how traditional sports are divided up. It's not based on your size.
Right.
It's based on what you're able to offer student athletes and how much you're able to offer student athletes.
Is that based on a total figure or a percentage?
Like you get a certain number of scholarships that you can offer. Like, Alabama football can offer this many scholarships and Grand Valley State University football cannot offer that many scholarships, right? Like it's different based on each level, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I look at esports, that's really the only way I can see you making a fair division is based on what people are offering, right? And honestly, if you look at what the top programs in the country are, like most of them, and this is with some exceptions, right? But most of them are the ones that are offering the most amount in scholarship to students. So that's how traditional sports is divided up. what are you able to offer? Division 3 can't offer anything. Division 2 can offer some. Division 1 can offer the most. And so to me, when I look at collegiate esports, and keep in mind, this would be extremely difficult and messy to do. Like I could, like this would be a nightmare, right? To try to figure this out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the fairest way to divide up schools is by how much they're offering. Now, with the current state of collegiate esports, that's especially difficult because you have certain schools, like surprisingly or not, the smaller schools that don't have the larger student bodies are usually offering more money than the schools that have the large student bodies, right?
As of right now.
Right. It can create this kind of competitive imbalance where, Michigan State, largest school in Michigan, right, doesn't offer esports scholarships, right? Yet they have 40,000 students.
Right.
So if they're in the Division 3 of esports, Michigan State University, right? Like,
but then you flip it around and then Northwood gets hurt if you do it the other way, because, Northwood obviously shells out scholarships. They have a lot of backing for it. And then, NCAA or whoever gets involved and says Michigan has the most. Michigan becomes an esports hall, but it hurts Northwood. No one goes to Northwood now because, they're going to be a different size and they can't give nearly what they could.
It's weird because you have to twist your mind from your conventional way of thinking when you look at athletics, right? Like you look at the big schools tend to be the best schools when it comes to collegiate sports, right? Mm-hmm. But ultimately, what the equalizer in those divisions, Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3, is resources they are able to offer, right? Mm-hmm. Gonzaga can offer in basketball the same amount of scholarships as the University of Michigan can,
right?
Even though the University of Michigan is
much bigger,
much larger than Gonzaga.
Look at Michigan and Michigan State's League of Legends team. They're two of the top 6 in the North region. And if we're going by a resources model, they would be Division 3.
And that's what I'm saying.
That's some of the best teams in the country.
Right.
So you could go by rank maybe, but those aren't always accurate, especially like Call of Duty doesn't even have a ranking system in their matchmaking. Or you could go by resources and then you see these schools that get nothing that are really strong. And are you going to prevent them from being able to be in the national championship because of that? Or are they going to be forced to get a D3 championship just because of the resources are lower?
That's why I said it's tricky, right? Because right now we see the opposite, where the larger schools this is generalization, right?
Yeah.
Generalization. The larger schools tend to offer less in collegiate esports than smaller schools do.
And my personal opinion on that is because they're waiting for the NCAA to make the move. Why does Michigan not have an esports team? Why does Michigan State not even really have esports? I mean, they have not even a club. They just have a League of Legends team or something like that. So, I mean, Boise, would we say Boise's probably the best D1?
West Virginia, I think.
West Virginia,
big waves.
They made
right
big
now.
waves. Yeah, West Virginia.
Arizona just hired somebody.
I'm a big fan of Oakland University.
Yeah, Oakland
University.
I heard
my hat in the ring here.
I heard those Golden
really
Grizzlies, but I'm just saying in general, the D1s haven't made that move yet. Now the question is when they make the move, because we can talk divisions all day, but there's going to be a move made that completely throws that out of the window, because as soon as that move's made, every D1 is going to throw their hat in the ring, and then everyone's going to be like, that block M, I'm going there. And
I think
it's just so unfair. No, you're good. No, you're good. I was wrapping up anyway.
A bit of context that I would say for larger universities with big student bodies, when they're going to create a esports program, they can pull in high tier talent based on the student body they already have.
Correct.
So if I'm a school with 40,000 students and I'm looking for the top 1% of nationally ranked League of Legends players, statistically, I'm going to have, whatever that number is, 1% players within my student body. There's just going to be talent on campus. Whereas if I have 900 students at my school and I'm looking for only ranked top 1% players in League of Legends, I might find one person on campus who's that ranked, and they don't want to play, by the way. You know what I mean? They're not interested in competing in the team. So I think for larger public universities with big student bodies, it's a lot easier for them to create competitive teams. I'm not saying top 5, but I'm saying competitive teams without the same amount of resources. Because, when you look at smaller institutions that are pulling in top tier talent, I mean, they're recruiting people based on the amount of money that they're offering them, not because of, the education that they're selling. You know what I mean? The players are going to these schools specifically for the esports program, and they've never heard of the education system, that's at the institution. I've heard of a ton of examples of talented collegiate esports players who told me that when they joined the school, they didn't even know what degree they wanted. They didn't even look up the degrees that the school had. They committed before looking that up. So that tells you, what the priorities are when they're joining the university. So for me, I agree. I think big public universities should be putting up higher number of, esports scholarships,
right?
But the need to do it, or the requirement to do it to pull in top tier talent, is not there like it is for smaller schools. Right. I mean, smaller schools with no money going towards scholarships don't pull in talent, and then they just don't get to compete at a high level. So public universities can do it. That's why Michigan and Michigan State can go out there with no scholarship money and still compete at a really high level, because statistically they just have a ton of students on campus.
So my proposition in this, now call me crazy, I don't know if this would work, but we all know esports is very different, and esports shakes everything up when it comes to, because esports isn't one game. Esports is a million different games. So what if you were to take, based on amount of money or resources that you can offer based on your population? So say Michigan has this much resources, they have this much population, this is what they can get, that's their division. What if you were to say, because Northwood obviously has a lot of backing, so Northwood has resources, this is their student body, this puts them in that tier. Would you be able to do that and get away with it with divisions?
I don't know if there's an entity out there that could implement that nationwide.
Because I mean, isn't there a certain amount that people put into backing right now for esports that other schools obviously aren't going to put in? You know what I'm saying? Like there's
probably a decent equation that would get you close, but I think the X factor that a lot of schools are benefiting from right now is there are schools with directors who are just ace recruiters, and they also have a lot of connections in the semi-pro scene. So you look at Cody from Northwood, you look at Brian Hummel from Bay State. Yes, Bay State's giving full rides, and Cody has a lot of resources and a lot of scholarship to give, but they're just really good recruiters. There are schools that have just as much resources who are not as nearly as competitive because they're not good recruiters and they don't have the connections to the semi-pro scene. So that part of the equation, I think, could lead, or I think that's the X factor in some of the equation that might lead to some schools missing out if we were to create an equation like you described.
Okay.
But I think, to your point, Adam, right, then if those are schools with similar resources, right, like then Cody is being highlighted even more, that he's been able to take resources of similar institutions and excel in the way that he has, right? And then on the flip side, right, if you're not doing that, then it's going to show up if you have, if you're in the same division.
But if we create that as a division or as an equation, he would be stuck in Division 2 at the top. Maybe he wins Division 2, but
it hurts him in the long run.
Who cares who wins the D2 basketball championship versus the D1 basketball championship? There's a difference.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they're equally great for certain students and in your position, but on a national level, they're different. Like, your best D2 school usually isn't going to beat your best D1 school in basketball.
No. Adam, this is sacrilege for you to be saying right now.
I know. I'm at a D school who loves basketball. That was a bad example, and I hope my boss doesn't see it.
Clip it.
But it's true. But it's true. Like, if he can win a D1 championship, but someone's gatekeeping him and not allowing him to even compete for it, there's a problem with the equation there. In my opinion.
What's an interesting system, like CS:GO, that does kind of like the promotional type system, right? Where like if they say, I guess that's also kind of what European football does to soccer.
Yeah,
where
and stuff.
You move up or you move down depending on your performance and things like that. Side note, kind of shifting this topic a little bit. I wanted to go back to what Carl said about conferences. Did we lose Carl?
I think he just turned video off. I think he's talking.
Okay, having a conversation.
Yeah, conversation somewhere.
I think there's a lot of value in conferences for schools, and like especially Adam was one of the architects of the WAC, right? Wolverine Hoosier Athletic Conference. Having the ability to compete against traditional rivals not only provides value to the students, provides value to your administration as well.
I mean, and Michigan did that with Ohio State. Ohio State on Twitter was a big thing when they played each other in esports.
Yeah,
and
that
they
was
made
cool.
and they made a big thing out of it. I was like, that's, to be honest with you, if esports had that, where you just had the Big Ten, obviously then you start talking the divisions before the conferences. But I feel like if you have the ability, why not just make esports in conferences? You know what I'm saying? Like the WAC obviously is a little bit different than everybody else, but not everybody has a conference either, though.
One, I think it's a cool idea. I mean, there are still problems with it, right? Like if we created the GLIAC, right? There are schools within our conference that have significant resource differences in how much that they're able to offer students, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that gets tricky once again. But for me, from a standpoint of having the excitement around competition, right? And the name recognition, right?
Right.
When I'm playing somebody from California, my students, unless they're Division I, they may never have heard of this school before, right?
Right.
But having us play against Davenport, right? Everybody here at Grand Valley State University knows who Davenport University is, right? Not only are they, 20, 30 minutes from here, but they're in our conference as well. So we play them in every other sport as well.
Right. And that's why I feel like esports does one very well. Like you pointed out, you play teams didn't even know existed. You hear these colleges that you didn't even know existed, but they have an esports program and they're trying to do something that, not a whole lot of other people are trying to do. And then you look at things like Michigan or Ohio State or Michigan State, and it's like, where are their programs? Like, yeah, they have club teams and I mean, don't get me wrong, they're great teams in some of that club, but it's just like, where are their programs? Why hasn't the majors or D1 or the big name schools, why have they not thrown their hat in the ring yet? And I feel like when that does, though, when that happens, I don't know how it happens, but when that happens, that hurts Florida Southern. That hurts Grand Valley. That hurts Northwood. Like, I feel like that hurts the little guys. Sorry, Oakland, you're not too little.
Don't call me out.
I'm going to say Oakland because you're going to be hurt.
I'm not Division I. I'll tell you.
You're going to be hurting your buddies, and then you're going to have to answer to them. But I feel like that move, then if you decide that conferences are the way to go or divisions are the way to go, then you have to redo everything, and it's just square one again. You know what I'm saying?
But I don't know if it necessarily hurts us as much as it helps. I mean, the legitimacy that esports would have if Michigan and Michigan State had a varsity team they were giving scholarships, and
I can see that
on
too.
ESPN or on the Big Ten network, like that would just create so much more buzz in the high school scene. There would be more students in the pool.
Yeah.
Yes, we wouldn't be as competitive on a national level, most likely, but I think it helps the entire scene and
how much harder
all of us.
How much harder though is that for you to recruit and get kids? Especially in the Michigan
kids
area.
in general, it'd be easier. Talent question.
Talent. There you
probably
go.
more difficult.
Right.
I already lose. I mean, at Aquinas, I was already losing kids to Michigan State and Michigan just because of the prestige of the degree. Yeah. People would rather get a degree at Michigan State than they would at Aquinas.
Which I don't know why, but
and they would get accepted into Michigan and be like, "Oh, I got accepted to Michigan. My parents make me go there instead." I'm like, oh, that's fair. I mean,
if Michigan sends you an acceptance letter, you don't say no to that acceptance letter.
Yeah,
but there's something to that though. But I feel like at the same point, if they decide, or the NCAA, like you guys are talking divisions, decides, okay, this is what's happening for esports. Here's the majors. They're D1. Then you guys get dropped D2, D3, whatever, NAIA, and your abilities to give scholarships and stuff like that start running dry, or you can't do it.
It hurts the day we can't compete against Michigan and Michigan State in the same league.
Correct.
That is the value.
That is
the value
right there.
Is you can come to Aquinas or Florida Southern and still compete against Michigan and Michigan State.
100.
But the day when we can't compete against the top schools is when the small schools will really suffer.
I think the schools, that Adam says that it hurts the most are the Division IIIs. Because right now out there's a lot of smaller schools who have been thriving in collegiate esports, right? And to be pushed down to Division III where, if it's follows traditional sport, we're not giving esports scholarships anymore, right? That's something
I'll throw one out there. I'll throw one out there right now. Trine has a great esports program, and they have a great setup, and they put a lot of money into it. D3 rolls around, they can't give scholarships. I feel like that does not bode well for collegiate esports. If you hold collegiate esports to the same standards as you do for traditional sports, I mean, don't get me wrong. It didn't stop me from playing hockey in D3, but I wasn't going for just hockey. I was going for a meteorology degree. I also stumbled into baseball, but I was just like, if someone wants to go to your school on esports alone and cannot afford it, you give them scholarship money. If you take scholarship money away, I think you close the door on some of what esports is. And maybe that's why NCAA hasn't made a move on it yet. I don't know.
I think for D3, it would hurt the D3 schools, but I think it helps everyone else, and it creates programs at schools that don't already have it. So yeah, maybe Trine ends up with having to shut down their esports program because they can't compete without giving scholarships. But then in their place comes 5 new D2, D1 schools to pick up the baton, if you will.
So it's cool to gatekeep schools, but not players now, huh?
I mean, I'm not saying not allow D3 scholarships. That's the NCAA.
That's the NCAA.
I'm just in the field of play of which they create the rules for. But there's a lot of D3 schools, I think, who've kept it under student life. So technically, until the NCAA requires it to be under their wing and no one else is giving tournaments, like those D3 schools could find competition outside of NCAA tournaments.
Right.
I think the D1 schools, like the NCAA or a group like that getting involved and essentially bringing in a bunch of schools who have not already formalized an esports program in there, I think is a good thing for everybody. Right. The minute that, like the Michigan States of the world, all these Division I schools say, yeah, we're going to do esports now, right? I think that's good for everybody else involved. I think it's good for me. I think that's a good top to bottom. It's just, the rules that might be set in place may be more beneficial to some universities than others, right? And that's, I'm to be honest though, if you're a Division III school that, has esports but doesn't offer an esports scholarship, that could be a good thing for you, right? Now, because it's a more even playing field for schools of similar size to you, right?
Right.
So it really depends on the situation of the university itself, whether or not it would be a beneficial or disadvantageous thing. But I think just in general, the more schools that decide to develop esports programs, the better it'll be.
No, and I'm literally playing devil's advocate. It is better for Michigan State. The big money, the big names. Obviously, when you put esports in the spotlight, is better for esports in general. My thing is we've been talking at length about who are we to say pros can't play in collegiate. Who are we to say, with fully remote? Who are we to say you can't play esports remotely if you can't afford it? All of that jazz. Who are we to say that D3 can't give scholarships in esports? I feel like, and I feel like esports would stand up and say, "Yo, you can't do that." You know what I'm saying? But if NCAA makes that final call, that's NCAA's final call.
Well, I don't, like you said, I don't think we would. I don't think we would agree to do it. So
no, it's the same thing.
The other thing that you got to keep in mind is that, NCAA, let's say that they're really motivated and they want to make this happen. They see this podcast and they go, oh man, they made a lot of good points. Let's go ahead and stop D3s from giving scholarships. Well, they have to go reach out to Riot Games. They have to go reach out to Psyonix.
Developers.
They have to go reach out to Blizzard Activision and reach out to Nintendo. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
And see if they'll all agree to the same division structure for all the schools. And it's just this really, really complicated area where I don't see a world where a governing body is able to do what we're talking about in that way.
Right.
So they wouldn't be able to stop a Division III school from giving scholarships. Maybe the closest thing I could see is something like NACE jumping up and creating the divisions, and then here's the scholarships that you can give out. Not that NACE would ever do this, but I'm just giving an example of an entity who might be able to have the power to do it. Schools would just leave NACE and then they would compete in other ways. It's not as if, I'll put it this way, the most valuable national bracket right now is almost always the developers national bracket for collegiate. So for League of Legends, it's called C-Law. So if ECAC jumps out and says, hey, if you want to compete in our national championship, you can't give out scholarship money at the Division III level. It's like, cool, I'll leave, and then I'll just go compete in C-Law, which is the real national championship anyway.
Right.
So I don't see a world where anybody but the developer themselves could actually implement this and it be accepted.
So here's to Carl's point, right? So Riot Games had an agreement with PlayVS to help govern their high school League of Legends raise, and PlayVS is charging schools to participate in that league, right? Mm-hmm. What I could see happening is something very similar, where instead of that organization being PlayVS, it's the NCAA. So you have Riot Games approach an NCAA and say, hey, we want you to run our collegiate esports leagues, right?
Right.
And the NCAA says, okay, we'll run it. We're going to charge schools to be a part of it. And here's our rules, right? And because of the current relationships that all of our schools have with the NCAA, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to be a very hard sell for me to go to Grand Valley and say, we shouldn't do that. The NCAA is running esports, right? But we shouldn't do that. As soon as that happens, because it's so familiar, we already have the people and the policies in place related to the NCAA. If they take over any one of these esports, like if they create a partnership with the developer, right? Whether that's Psyonix or Riot Games, and I imagine it probably will be just one. There'll be one first developer that steps up and says, hey, maybe it's the NCAA, I want you to run whatever it is, CSGO, whatever the game is, right? There will be some game that a developer comes out and says, hey, do this, right? That is going to send so many shockwaves throughout collegiate esports in general, right? And I can see that happening, right? I understand it's difficult, but it's not, to me, that different from what Riot Games did with PlayVS. They picked a tournament organizer, which the NCAA is. They're a tournament organizer, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's ultimately who they are. They picked a tournament organizer to give exclusivity to for running a certain level of their leagues. And, as part of that negotiation or agreement, they may set rules and standards for what that league is going to look like. And ultimately, for Riot Games, what do you get out of it? Well, maybe it's a revenue sharing thing. Right. If we're charging students a certain amount of money to participate in this collegiate esports league, well, Riot Games get this kickback and they have somebody who runs the tournaments for them.
Right.
I'm not saying it will be Riot Games. I'm just using them as an example, right?
I mean, it's, when you think about it, that's how it breaks down. It's the developers that are probably going to have the last pull in all of this anyway, because it's their games that are going to be used and monetized, or money's going to be brought in off their games. So obviously they're going to have the biggest say with the NCAA. It's not going to be the NCAA stepping in and saying, here it is, this is what it is. It's going to be the developers and NCAA.
Well, I think there's one piece of the Play Versus puzzle that you missed is Play Versus actually went to state athletic associations and ran the tournaments for them. So what I would see is actually what that would look like at the college level is a for-profit company goes to the NCAA and goes to Riot and says, we will run College League of Legends sponsored by the NCAA. And that for-profit company would be in the background running it. And I think that's much more likely to happen. And it might be one of these collegiate licensing companies like Playfly or IMG Learfield. They're throwing a lot of money into the space. They have a relationship with some parties. I think that is a much more likely scenario, is that they get some type of contract between Riot and NCAA to run X tournament. Right. It probably won't be Riot to start with. My guess is it would be maybe Psyonix or Epic. Or Madden. Maybe Madden is the first NCAA title we see in 2 years, where Learfield runs the NCAA tournament.
EA can't do that correctly. Come on, bro.
I mean, Learfield already has the Madden license. They're doing the tournament. They just don't have the NCAA sign off on it right now. So it's happening to an extent. It just doesn't have that sign off / involvement from the NCAA. But I think that's I think it's probably inevitable when we talk about the eyes and money that are looking towards esports right now. But we'll see.
There's too much money for the NCAA to definitely stay out of esports, right? At some point, they have to get involved.
They got to get their sticky little hands on all that money, because we all know there's a lot of money in esports. And once they figure out how to do it, here comes the NCAA hand. Now, my question, side note, NCAA football is coming out, and there's going to be NCAA football in esports. We know it. But here's the thing. Do you have to play as your school?
I was thinking about this yesterday. Like, I think
it's going to be so weird.
Yes.
If the
answer's going to be yes.
Florida Southern has playing Michigan, what?
Well, no. I think the best Madden players are going to end up being recruited to the best college teams, college traditional football teams. So your best Madden player is going to go play at Bama. Like Bama's going to get the best Madden player, and then the second best will go to Michigan.
Can you imagine the marketing opportunities with that though?
Exactly. Think about being a recruit. Like, how do you decide your school? Like, because you're going to be stuck with that traditional sports team.
If you're a top 10 school, your kid has to play at your school. I mean, or as your school. There's no the kid's playing at Bama. He's not playing as Michigan. I guarantee you.
If you're like the second best player on NCAA, the video game, do you go to play at Michigan, or do you go sit the bench at Bama as the second player?
Georgia.
Yeah. And do you think those schools are going to sustain over the next 4 years as good teams? Because if that team falls,
you got to work hand in hand.
With a bad team.
You got to work hand in hand with Harbaugh. You got to see what his recruiting class looks like. You know what I'm saying?
I think that gets so tricky because think of how much power then.
Oh yeah.
The developer of the game has to influence results by making a certain team stronger or weaker, right?
Yeah.
Like that is something that's never been like before, right? Like,
yeah, but it's all like a marketing thing. Like the whole project would be marketing focused, not necessarily competitive, even field focus.
Right.
I mean, how cool is it that the player that is playing as Bama against the Georgia player playing as Georgia? I mean, that's.
Or what
they
could do,
thinking about it.
What they could do is bring back the coaching thing and then have like Harbaugh play him coaching in the game. You know what I'm saying? Like have the whole team management.
I can't wait to play as Aquinas College. That's going to be nice.
Ooh, undefeated since 1894.
I maintain Oakland University has never lost a football game as well.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Look at us.
So that leaves open. You can play as anybody, Carl. You guys could play as any team.
Yeah. We get to be Bama. So
yeah, there you go. I mean, you lose to Georgia, it's fine. It's okay. Which, by the way, big bunch of BS because Michigan lost to Georgia too. We should be number 2. All right.
We are putting that out in our hearts.
Yeah, in our hearts, we're number 2.
Know.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
How did this derail the sports ball?
Go blue.
Yeah,
this interview has gone way off course. This isn't
way
the
off course.
Roundtable anymore.
It's the Coaches Roundtable.
Hey, well,
this is not my area.
We're cross-pollinating. We're hitting all the audiences.
Well, it's how many people come to you when you say you're dealing with esports and they're like, oh, what do they play? Football, hockey, baseball? It's like, no, esports isn't traditional just sports. Like it's video games. Like how a lot of people, like when I say high school esports, like, oh, what are they going to play? Madden? What are they going to play? NHL? I'm like, no, they're going to play video games, not just traditional video game or traditional sports as video games. Like, what would they play then? Like,
most of the time, it's
video games.
People are in the know and they know what esports is. I'm not saying that's most of the time. I'm saying the conversations that I have are people are either in the know or they have no idea and can't grasp the concept of what college esports would be. Right. So it takes the half an hour. What's that?
How do you practice? What do you practice? What does a practice look like?
Who do you play against?
Yeah. Oh, do you throw a ball around somewhere?
How do you play Grand Theft Auto against somebody else?
I had a great conversation one time with someone who asked me if we did drone racing.
Yeah.
Okay, that was on the TV over when Thanksgiving? Was it Thanksgiving morning? It was on the TV because my dad was like, "Oh, when are you guys going to get a drone racing team?" I'm like,
I'm not. Well, here's the thing. That is a big esport thing, and they call it esports because they use the VR headset and they fly around.
They sit in gamer chairs like us.
I mean,
I saw it.
My big one has always been, oh, you watch other people play video games? I'm like, yeah, you watch other people play football too. Like,
that's exactly it.
Do you feel like you sitting on the couch drinking a beer is really playing the game? Probably not.
That's exactly it, man. Oh, yeah. What do? How many threes did LeBron score? Exactly. You watched him play a game. Yeah. It's entertaining. So's that, brother. All right, I'm done. I'm
You're speaking to the choir.
Yeah, I know. You guys know it all too well. Were we done with the last subject? I think we were. I think we hashed out enough division and yelled at the NCAA long enough that people get the picture. But Carl, no, we didn't.
No, it's good luck. It's we can talk conceptually about whether or not that'd be a good thing or how we might think it would be done, but actually implementing it is just such, to me, it's
Tricky.
such an abstract thought about how you would actually do that.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it.
If they're talking about it and they want to know, give me a call. I've got some ideas.
We've got some ideas. Oh, hi, Bows.
We could get a group together, group think here, and
Want to say hi to everybody?
Yeah.
Bowser says hello.
B.
Bowser's even made an
nice.
appearance in the One Up XP show now. All right, buddy. Oh,
That's
sorry.
awesome.
That's the teaser. Wait till the end for the best part.
Yeah.
Special appearance.
Special appearance by Bowser, which shares a name with a villain from Mario, even though you're the nicest dog ever. So yes, that concludes the first ever Coaches Roundtable. I'm sure I'll have these nerds all back again for another one. But my huge thank you to Adam Antor. He is the head of esports. Did I get that right? Florida Southern College.
No, I'm the director.
He's a director.
now.
My bad.
Yeah.
You guys all.
I fought 2 years for that title. All right.
I'm sorry, my bad. He was the head of esports at Aquinas. He's moved up
Correct.
the chain. Chris Bilski, the head of esports at Grand Valley State University. Is that correct?
Yes.
I did it. Nailed it. Carl Leone, head coach, correct, of esports?
Head esports coach.
Yeah, head esports coach. There you go. Of Oakland University. Everyone has different titles. All right, lay off.
It's all the same.
Hey, our
We all
HR
do-
won't let us change it. All right.
I'll do the same.
You can't get it wrong because our HR department won't let us.
Yeah, they
all
won't
right?
let you change it. But I appreciate these men immensely for sitting down and taking 2 hours of their time to discuss some pretty big topics within esports. So thank you, fellas. I do appreciate it. And we'll be back with some more topics. Who knows? Maybe the same topics, because I don't think these topics are going away. And I certainly appreciate your expertise here, guys. Maybe we opened some minds. Maybe we opened some doors and educated some people today. Yeah, I will be around to all your campuses. Florida, I don't know when I'm getting down there, but I'm sure I'll be down there at some point.
I got the guest bed ready.
Oh, okay.
Right over here. Yeah, come on down.
Yeah, thanks.
Come on down.
I've already
It's
been
warm,
Look
the
at that. You got
windows
invited down
open.
there before I did.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
How far are you from
Oof.
Disney?
An hour.
Well, that's too far, bro.
No, it's not.
I've
Carl,
already.
have you been invited down there yet?
Yeah, have you?
The door is
Have you
always
been invited
open
down
for
to Florida?
everyone.
I haven't. No.
No. Oh,
wow. You too, huh?
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks,
Oh wait,
Adam.
no,
Yeah.
maybe I have. I don't know.
It's
I
even
think so.
even the outro got sidetracked. But thank you guys. I do appreciate it. We'll have them all back on. We'll have some more visits. In fact, we'll have a Grand Valley campus visit at some point, like we did for Oakland. I'm just gonna have to have Adam like fly a drone around and get campus footage, and then I'll say I visited or something. But it all works
No,
out.
You got to come down.
You
Come
gotta
on.
Buy my ticket, bro. All right. Thank you
All
guys.
right.
I appreciate it. You're the best.